Okay, in this next one, before we go on to the compositing, I guess you can jump onto the compositing if you'd really like to, but I thought we'd kind of amp up the scene a little bit with some 3D elements. So, we're going to make a few things. First up, I thought we'd add a little life to this hut. This hut, let me scroll in there if I can. Come on, mouse. This hut, while it looks nice and it's obviously the focal point of the scene, if I turn off that last layer, you get a little bit better of an idea of the scene. We don't need the sky for now. While it is definitely the focal point, it's, she comes around this corner and this is what she's found her where she's been looking for or whatever. There's no real life happening to it, right? So you could add in a green screen person. You could even shoot like a person like standing around a campfire. I don't know. There's all kinds of things you could do here. But I thought we'd add a little bit of like moving cloth, like just a little kind of, I don't know what they're called, like a lean-to, I think they used to be called at some point. Just a little kind of fabric-y roof thing here on the side, which is extremely easy, and it looks great, and it adds a little bit of movement and life to the scene, and we can render it out as a separate element. As a compositor, I like to have all my elements kind of organized, like the 3D things in a project and the compositing all happening in one project. So we're going to create a completely different file, render it out as a image sequence with an alpha channel, and then just bring that into our main compositing scene later on. Which is what you can do with any of your 3D objects now that we've got this match move and everything. So let's go ahead and get this set up for putting that in, right? So really all we need to see is the hut layer, which is just that, although you could leave on the shadow if you want, but I'm just going to turn it off for now. And what we're going to do is run a little cloth sim, very simple, nothing hard at all. So select this guy. Actually, I'm going to save this real quick before we even get started. Save as, I'm going to call this fabric, and I'm going to call it version 1, because it's, like I said, it's a completely different file. There we go. And save it there. And I'm going to turn the background off for now, just so I can see some things moving quickly. Texture is fine. Select that guy, and we're going to put the cursor to that object and use the period key on the number pad, zooms it right into it. So let's get this one in here too. I'm going to create a plane right there. It's going to be our fabric, and I'm going to move it forward a bit in Y, so it's just kind of touching that, right, a little bit in front of that that plane, because it's kind of going to be, sort of like a little roof thing right there. So I'm going to go ahead and put it right there. I think it looks very nice. And I'm going to tab into edit mode, grab these end two, move them out a little bit further in Y. I kind of want it to be a little bit longer. If you look through the camera, you can see that the angle that we're looking at this, it kind of truncates it a bit. It kind of makes it appear a bit shorter. So I'm making it longer to sort of compensate for that a bit. In fact, I'm going to pull it out a little bit longer, and see how right now it's kind of pointing up because the camera's below this hut. We're going to lower that in Z down to maybe, that looks pretty good right there, right? Yeah. May not be perfectly accurate, but it looks nice. And in visual effects, all that matters is that it looks nice. So let's get to making this some fabric. I'm going to select everything, hitting A twice. Oh, you know what? Actually, not yet. Let's split it once. If we were to subdivide this now, we're going to get a whole bunch of little rectangles. I'd rather have small squares. So I'm going to subdivide it once down the middle, and that's Control R, by the way. And that will, when we subdivide this, we'll make little squares instead of little rectangles. Hit A twice, and W, subdivide, crank it all the way up. And let's do it one more time. Subdivide, and that's probably enough right there, right? That looks good. All right, so So now we've got this, right? And it looks okay. As far as it looks like a brand new, like you just went to not Home Depot, Bed Bath and Beyond and bought a nice piece of fabric. Maybe y'all don't have a Bed Bath and Beyond where you are. Anyway, we don't want it to look like a nice piece of fabric. We want it to look horrendous, like a ripped up piece of crappy burlap. Something that looks like it would fit in this house, right? So we got to roughen this up, and I got a quick way to roughen up the edges, right? You want the edges to be what's messed up. It doesn't matter what's going on the inside. So select those edges. I'm going to hold down Alt and select edges until I get just the edges I want, the outer edges, like such. Alt and right clicking and Alt and Shift to add to that selection. And then down here, I'm going to hit O to activate my the proportional fall off thing. I'm going to go to random. And now make sure that your pivot point should be on median point. So we're going to scale it, but we're going to scale it from the center of it and just hit S and scale it out a little bit. And now what we're looking at is you're not going to be looking at, it's going to scale this outside edge exactly the same, right? It's going to remain a rectangle. But that next layer inside of the vertices is going to get all crazy and funky. So we want that. We want it to be all crazy and funky, but we don't want vertices overlapping. So try and kind of rein it in a little bit. So I'm going to scale. And if you just roll your mouse, you can see that it'll change up the pattern a little bit. Where should we go with this? Let's see. I kind of like the jaggier look, but I'm not sure. Maybe a little bit more. Let me scroll wheel a bit. I'm just trying to see what kind of different shapes it's giving me. Well, that looks pretty good, right? Right there, kind of like that. Not too bad. All right, so let's, with those same ones selected, now I'm going to hit X to delete them and click vertices. And now we've got a nice raggedy piece of cloth, right? So there may be some weird things happening in here. So select them all again. I'm going to actually deselect the outer edge now by with everything selected. I'm Alt Shift right clicking, and now I just want to smooth these interior ones. So I'm going to hit the space bar. Oh, I already got it up. Smooth vertex. Start typing smooth and you'll see it pop up. Click that and it kind of smooths those out very nicely, and you can sort of even adjust them a little bit. You can still leave them a little bit crazy. You just don't want anything overlapping, right? That looks pretty good right there. All right, so now tab, and it looks perfect. Absolutely delightful. And if you even want, you could come into this. I'm going to go top view and orthographic, and I'm going to grab some of these, and you can even undo that. Holy cow. You can even kind of mess these up a little bit more as well, if you want, which I do. Let's pull this guy down a little bit. That looks nice. This one up a little bit. Grab this one just because I don't want them that close. I don't want that overlapping happening. Just trying to keep them a little bit smooth. And if it doesn't work, you can actually turn off the proportional editing and just move individual vertices to get a nice smoother appearance. And I'm going to hit G and just kind of move that guy there and this one there. And that looks pretty nice, I think. So there's our fabric, right? Yeah, that looks great. And we're not going to worry about, see how it's kind of, we've changed it a little bit in Z, right? It's not perfectly flat. Doesn't matter one bit. Now we're going to set some pinpoints, which means it's going to act as if you've never worked with cloth before. Imagine like a flag, where a flag would connect with the flagpole. You kind of want to you're going to let physics do all the work of animating the cloth. But where it touches the flagpole, where you want it attached to something, you have to create pin points. So we're going to select a few vertices and set those as our pins, so that those vertices, when we run the cloth sim, they won't move. They'll stay perfectly still as if it's being propped up. We're going to have a couple sticks here in the front and then the back we'll just assume is kind of attached to the building at 2 points. Yeah, so those will hold perfectly still while all the cloth is simmed around it. Oh, one more thing we can do, just to get a little bit of a cheat going on. I'm going to grab that center one, and I'm going to hit O again. And instead of that, I'm going to go, you can try any of these rounded ones, inverse, root, sphere. Just try root, see what that looks like. And I'm just going to kind of lower that center a little tiny bit. Maybe not. Maybe root might not be the right one, so don't grab that. Try inverse square. That looks nice. Yeah, that looks nice. And I'm going to grab it again and roll it in a little further. And it just kind of gives us that, it already starts looking a little saggy, you know, a little bit saggy cloth. That last one might have been a little bit too far. That's not too bad right there. And I'm also going to grab the, not that, the center line, and I'm going to pull that down a little bit just to start to kind of give it a little head start on the, where it's going to, you know, how it's going to lay, right? So just a little bit of cheating. And then I'm going to grab those pinpoints. So we're going to grab, I'm going to go in, I want a little bit of overhang. So when you grab the pinpoints, if I grab a pinpoint, say here and here, let me get that out of the way. If I grab that pinpoint and that one, everything on this side of it is going to swing down and hang, while everything on the inside is going to kind of stretch into the center. And between those 2 points, it's going to sag a little bit this way, right? It's going to sag, but we're mainly going to have kind of a tighter line here between all these points that we pick. So I want this front to kind of hang down a little extra. So I'm actually going to pick something a few layers in. How far do we want to go? Maybe four vertices in, and I'm going 3 in on the edges, and then back here I'm going to grab that and that. All right, so those are my 4 pinpoints. Hopefully, oh, I lost a couple. I'm going to grab them here and here. So there they are. That's where we're going to hang the cloth from. So with those 4 selected, head over to your object data panel, and under vertex groups, hit a plus sign. You'll get a new group and hit assign. So it just assigned those selections to that group. And you can see that if you unselect them and then click select again with that selected, it'll reselect it. I'm going to call this pin group and tab into edit mode. And now we can head right over to the cloth in the physics tab, hit cloth, and all we have to do, leave all this the same. This is all fine for what we're doing. Pinning, turn that on and grab your pin group. Now when you hit Shift A, the magic, not Shift A, Alt A, the magic should happen. And there we go. Looks great. Looks nice and fabric-y. Absolutely delightful. So, here's what we need to do now, right? So we've got this tracked camera. This tracked camera, you can see when we run the cloth sim, it starts from the flat state, and then the sim has to kind of take over and kick in. Gravity kicks in, pulls it all down, makes it look like fabric. So somewhere right around here, like frame 70, it's looking pretty nice, and it's kind of stable. So 70 is kind of like a good starting point, right? Because we don't want right at the beginning of the shot that it looks like this, right? We want it to already look like frame 70 by the beginning of the shot. There's a very easy way to do that, but we have to do one other thing instead. We're going to do what's called, we're going to set an initial state, which means that we're going to kind of freeze the sim here and then rerun it, reapply the cloth sim and run it again, so that right from this very first frame, it'll start looking like it's here. Before we do that, however, we have to make sure there's no intersections. And it doesn't really look like there is any. I think this is a really simple fabric, so I'm not that worried about it. But just to be safe, what we're going to do is we're going to go back to 0, and under cloth collision, open that up and turn on self collision. So now the fabric will collide with itself, and it won't overlap or interpenetrate itself which if we set the initial state with it already interpenetrated or crossing itself and then try to cloth sim, it could screw up, cause all kinds of weird issues. Don't want that. So we're going to set that self collision. We are going to hit Alt A, let it run for a little bit. And when we get to frame 70, which I think is what we decided is our nice state right there, head over to the modifier tab and you'll see that the cloth physics tools apply a modifier, and you're just going to hit apply. When you hit apply, the cloth modifier vanishes, the cloth settings over here are now gone, and all you've got is a solid object that is your fabric, which is our initial state, right? So now it already looks like fabric. Now we can go back to frame 1, back to the physics tab, and hit cloth again, and turn on our pinning again, same pin group. And now when we run it, it should be great. It should already be, it's kind of already there. I'm actually going to do it one more time, actually, because did you see it kind of set right there? Oh, you know what? It's probably going to do that every time, right? So let's leave it. Let's leave it for now. I'm going to leave self-collision off as well. So this is probably pretty good. However, what we could use is, you can see it kind of stops moving by frame 70, 80, something like that. And the whole point of this thing is that it's moving, that it gives a little life to the scene, so we're not just looking at a painting. So the easiest way to do that is to, back to frame 1, I'm going to add in a wind, Shift A, force field, wind. And I'm going to move it over here, and I'm going to rotate it in Y, because I kind of want it blowing this way, rotating Z a little bit like that. And I think that's probably pretty good, right? Kind of at a diagonal towards it. And I'm going to crank this up, right? If we leave it at the default settings and hit play, nothing's happening, right? Turn this up to, what, 260. Now we got a lot happening here, right? So stop that, back to frame 1, try it again. Looking pretty good now. Might be too much, actually, right? If there was this much wind, maybe other things in the scene would be moving. So maybe let's do like 240, see what that looks like. That could be enough. Yeah, that looks pretty good. See how just this kind of thing is moving? There's a little movement. Maybe even 250. Let's try 250, get a little bit extra in there. That looks nice, huh? All right, so in fact, I'm going to turn the noise up a bit too, and let's see how that looks. That might add a little bit of extra something to it as well. Yeah, it looks pretty good. I wonder how we can get rid of that little, that dropping still bugs me a little bit. Bending, right? Less, smaller, bigger wrinkles, structural, overall stiffness. What if we set this to 30, right? Run that. Little less dampening, a little less movement. Let's set that back to, I know it was at 15, but let's try 20, and let's set the mass to maybe 0.2, and go back to frame 1 and run it again. Oh, geez, what the heck is going on there? 0.3. Back here. Do that again. You know what we need? We might need to turn on the interpenetrating again, or turn our wind down a little bit, because I think I'm going to turn on self-collision, which is going to slow it down a bit, but I think it'll be all right. All right, so nothing's coming through there now. That looks great. That'll work. It's a small piece of fabric, so it's not going to slow it down too much. All right, so I think that's going to work pretty good. All right, for our fabric, I'm going to hit smooth, and you are welcome to throw on a subdivision surface if you would like. It's kind of, is it going to make a difference that much? Subdivision, that's fine. You can leave it there, yeah? All right, yeah, I'll leave it on. I'm just going to render it 1, too. Well, let's see what is, yeah, just render it 1. View 1, 1. That'll work. So, there we go. We've got our fabrics looking pretty good, right? Let's add in those sticks. And then we will get to texturing it really quickly and lighting it, and we will be good to go. Save often, Control S. You never know when things are going to crash on you. So let's, I'm going to go top view, orthographic, tab, and I can see now where those pins are. If I put the cursor right there and I hit Shift A, I'm going to add in a cylinder. Ooh, no. Ooh, undo that. Control Z. I'm in edit mode. Don't want that. Out of edit mode, Shift A, add a cylinder. There we go. Scale that way down, and scale it in Z a bit. Scale in Z. That's looking pretty good. All right. So now what we're going to look at is we've got to look at the painting we've got here. Oof, go back to camera view. What are you doing? I'm going to turn back on the background, and I'm actually going to, you know what, we need to put these on their own layer, right? So let's grab these two things, hit M, and, oh, you know what else we need is the wind. So grab them two things and the wind, M, and we're going to go down to one of these layers down here, and then you can turn this on, right? I can turn them both on. That's fine. Come on with that. Why do I keep doing that? We want to see what this is going to look like against the actual backdrop. So if we hit material's not going to do it, but rendered certainly will. We can kind of see where that pole is. I'm looking at this rock, right? We could roto this rock later. I'd rather not. I'm very anti-roto if I can help it. So I'm just going to kind of put it there. And I'm going to hit tab. And if you're in wireframe mode, this will work. You can just grab all those by hitting C. And I'm going to bring those down under. Oh, I still got that on. Turn that off. I'm going to bring that down under the fabric. And tab. And I'm going to scale it a little bit in Z. Or I'm sorry, in everything but Z, because it's still a little thick for me. I think that looks pretty nice, right? We'll have a better idea actually when we light it. Let's, you want to light it? Let's do that. Throw in a light, right? Lamp. And we're just going to put a rough light in. We'll dial this in a little bit better once we texture it. So I just threw in a sun lamp. I'm going to move it over here out of the way. Front view. The trick to lighting is to look at the scene that you're lighting to match, obviously, right? Shadows are very long. It was probably late afternoon when we shot this. The shadows are very long down the mountain and sort of, it looks like maybe slightly back, kind of away from the camera and the actress. So in our front view, we're going to kind of rotate it just sort of at the slope of the mountain, maybe a little less. And in our front view, or I'm sorry, our top view, we're going to rotate it backwards a bit. And let's zoom in up there and take a look, and it's getting there. I'm going to create a node. Actually, you know what? Leave that one open. I'm going to create a node panel because I would like to see my materials. And I'm just going to crank this up to 3 for now, just to get a good idea of how that's looking. Looking pretty good, right? Shadows are in the right spot. This is shadowed. This is shadowed. You know, the highlights are kind of along these edges, just like we have here. So I think that's in the ballpark for now. Let's go back to that pole we were working on. Excuse me. And let's do this. I'm going to go Z again, and I'm going to tab, select all, and Control R. I'm going to throw like 3, maybe. We don't need that many. It's really small and far away. I'm going to throw 3 loop cuts in there. A, C. I'm going to grab these guys and just kind of move them around a little bit. A, C, this one, and I'm going to move that one forward a little bit. Just to kind of make it look, ooh, that's a little bit much actually, but yeah, I just want to make it look a little bit random, like a real stick kind of. And you could spend a lot of time, you know, you can spend as much time on this as you'd like. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this. These are barely noticeable. We're not even going to texture them. We're just going to kind of get them into the color range, and I think that'll be just fine. For that other one on the other side, I'm going to Shift D for duplicate, hit X, and just kind of move it over to that other side, kind of get an idea where that pin is. I'm going to rotate it in Z a little bit so we get a different, kind of a different shape. You know what? Actually, let's go RY 180. So we do a complete 180 with it. See what that gives us. And with that, we can rotate in Z till we get something we kind of dig. That looks all right there. And so now we've got some rocks and grass kind of here in front of it. So I'm actually going to, let's go tab. I'm going to select up here. Put the cursor there, 3D cursor to selected. And I'm now going to scale around the 3D cursor and hit scale. And it should scale down. I'm going to hit Z again. Should scale down right to where we want it. Like something like that should be fine. Right, look at that. Now we don't have to roto anything. I think that'll be just fine. And yeah, so there we go. Yeah, so let's go ahead and quickly texture this, right? So we've got, is it moving, right? It's moving, right? Yeah, sure, right? Alt-A. Yeah. We can turn this off in the viewport. Oh, that's a rendered view, that's why. Like, why is it going so slow? That's better. Oh, look at that. We're hitting the objects, right? So let's go ahead and just for the heck of it, collision. There's no clock, right? You just got to pick collision and grab that and hit collision. And with any luck, those will now not go through, which is what we got, right? The fabric will not penetrate those two poles, which is wonderful. Okay, so now we need to texture our fabric a little bit. And to do that, we're going to, I'm going to switch this back to rendered mode so I can see what's going on here. And is there a different frame where it looks, there we go, something like that, right? Is that not smooth? Smooth, yeah, I guess it is smooth, just weird. I turned off that, right? Turn that back on, looks nice. I'm going to click new. And we get a nice new material. Call it fabric, or actually this is going to be burlap, so we can call this burlap. And we can leave all this in here for now, but what we're going to do is bring in a texture, and we're going to map it on there. We didn't unwrap this. We don't really need to. I mean, it's just a plane, right? So we're going to cheat a little bit. Input, no, texture. Bring in our image first. Image, and connect that into diffuse. And the image we're going to bring in is one I grabbed from Pixabay, which is this burlap. I grabbed two, but I think this one's the better one. The bigger grain makes it show up a bit more, easier to control how much we see of that. Let me make this a little bigger so you can see what is going on here. And I'm going to turn off that. Okay, there we go. And save often, as always. So, image texture, right? Looks horrendous so far. Let's bring in a texture coordinate. Generated, plug it in. Boom. Stretching in Z. You can hit box. Should kind of clean that up a bit. Looks pretty nice. Turn on this blend a bit to kind of smooth out those where it overlaps a bit. Which is good. You kind of just don't go too far with it. If you go too far, it'll kind of blend back in the old one. So just go a little bit with it, just to kind of get rid of the hard edges where it blends around the corners and stuff. And I think that's fine. However, it's very thick, right? The scale is a little bit wrong. So let's change the scale a bit. I'm going to throw in a vector mapping. Put it here between the texture coordinate and the image. And the scale, I'm going to do like 1.3 maybe. 1.3 and 1.4 maybe. 1.3. Probably doesn't matter. Set this to like 1.15. Trying to get a little bit better here on the edges. And I think that looks very nice. However, it looks like our light could be a little brighter, right? Because now we're kind of really, you know what? Actually, before we do that, let's finish this texture. There's black spots all over it, right? Where you can see through that. We got to fix that. So let's make it transparent there. Make some space here. Bring in a transparent node shader, transparent shader, and also a mix shader. Just right there, and plug those in together. and we're going to use, we're going to create an alpha map from this image itself. So you can use the RGB to black and white node if you want, but then you'd also have to control it, you'd have to put a color ramp on it. Throwing a color ramp on it set to black and white will automatically convert it to black and white, which makes the RGB to black and white redundant. So just grab a color ramp and throw your color into that, and throw the color into the factor. So now you can see we're kind of, what it's doing right now, we're seeing the black still, and where it's white, the brighter spots, we're seeing through, right? Because the transparent is below. We could switch these, or you can also just switch the sides of this. You can kind of invert the map, the alpha map. So if we just click this, now you'll see all we're left with is our fabric, and we've got holes in it, but that looks a little thin. So let's drag the black slider down, and you'll see as we do that, it's kind of thickening up a bit, right? So kind of drag that to wherever you like. Zoom out. Don't make the judgment. You can kind of start to dial it in at this level, but we're never going to see it at that level in the final shot. So kind of zoom out a bit and take a look at it. How we're going to actually, see it in the finished composite, and I think that's looking pretty good actually. And also, if you want, if you kind of want to see through it a bit more, you can totally cheat. Grab that white one, and the more you turn that towards black, the more it's going to. I'm sorry, it's not. It's going to do the opposite. You're not going to see through it more. It's going to opaque it up more. So if you do want to see through it less, you can turn this down a bit, and it'll kind of firm it up a bit, make it a little bit more visible. Again, if you want to see through it more, you can turn this down a bit, which I think I'm going to leave like there maybe. That looks pretty good, right? So now you won't see through it at the level that we're going to be at, and once we've put blur and stuff on it, you're not going to be able to really see through it, but you'll get a sense that you are seeing through it. There may be times where a fold goes a certain way or something where you do get that sense that you are seeing through it. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it down a touch more, and I'm going to turn the lamp up a bit more, maybe 5. We can always dial in the colors better in comp as well later on. But 5 looks pretty good. I'm actually going to make this a bit yellow. Kind of never want completely white lights. So that looks a little bit better. It's kind of tying it into the roof and the natural tones a bit more. And the only thing left to do is put a color on these sticks, which I'm just going to grab one new and call this support sticks. And I'm just going to make that, let's sample something from the scene, right? Grab the eyedropper. That's maybe too dark. Something like that. Brighten it up a little tiny bit. That looks good right there, right? Support sticks, grab this one. Apply support sticks. And you know what? That's actually, it's too close to the color of the burlap. It kind of starts all looking the same. So let's go ahead and grab something else. That's not too bad. Yeah, that's actually not too bad right there. Looks good. All right, so we're pretty good with this, right? The fabric is running. Everything's working. Wind. We've got it on its own layer. Let's make sure if you only look at that layer, all you should see is your fabric and your sticks. Let's get this set up to render. I'm gonna go to UV image editor and layers over here, and the layer we want to render is that one. The passes, you can leave all these for now. We're just going to render out a PNG or something. In here, I'm going to start the samples pretty low. I'm going to start at like 50, and transparent is great. That's what we want. Post-processing, we want nothing. Output we'll get to in a minute. Performance, I tend to like mine around 64-ish usually. And let's hit render and see what that looks like. I'm going to switch this to the render result. Find my little hut, my little fabric. There it is. Let's turn on the compositing for a second. I think because of the tracking scene, it'll throw in the background. No? Yeah, there we go. Why is it so bright? Broke something. All right, turn that back off and render that again. Render. Just doing some tests, right? Why is that not lighting? Oh, we're light. Where's our light? Our light's on the other. Grab that light. That's why it's not lighting, right? There we go. Now, render. Sorry, go back to this one. Render. Now it should look right. There we go. That's what I wanted to see. That looks great. Look at that. Nice, right? Okay, so could be a little bit grainy. Let's turn this up to 100. And if you hover over the render window and hit J, it'll jump to the next slot. And you can hit render again. This way we can compare, see if that extra 50 samples is making a difference. And now when you hit J, kind of jump between them. Looks pretty good. And I think 100 is probably great for this. All right, so what else do we want to do? We want to, should we cache the cloth? What do you think? Cloth cache? We might as well, right? So let's go save and just hit bake. And that should, if you look at your point cache up here, it's baking it. That should be speed things up a little bit as far as scrolling in the window. And it should look very nice. And we're not going to worry about a shadow pass for this, mostly because it's moving so slightly. We can roto something if we want. I think there's enough going on there on the side of the hut that you're probably not going to even notice it all that much. So I'm not too worried about it. So if we go there, we scroll now. There we go. We can see our fabric moving very nicely. Right, Z, right, our fabric moving very nicely. Looks really good. Perfect. So we're ready to render this. So back to the render thing. I'm going to render mine as a PNG with an alpha, 0 compression, 8 bits fine. This isn't, if you're using better quality footage, or if you really want to have the range to mess with the colors, you can turn on 16-bit. For what we're doing here, 8's fine, but you definitely want an alpha channel. So render to something with an alpha channel. You can do OpenEXR if you'd like. Targa's, TIFFs, they all have alpha channels. Not JPEG. That's really the only one to really stay away from. So I'm going to go ahead and set an output path for this, and then I'm going to render this, and that will give me a sequence of just my little fabric. So cool. Hope you followed along. Hope everything was clear, and let's jump on to the next part.